we're about to start our Q&A with the filmmaker, and his name is Jason Woods. He is from Shreveport, and I'm excited to have him be a part of the Queerport Festival this week. Jason was a part last year. He shot some photos for us and has been just a huge help and great asset. So I'm really happy to have him on here. If you guys don't know who I am, by this time, I'm Derick Stevens-Jones. I'm one of the co-creators of Queerport. And in just a few short moments, like I said, Jason Woods will be joining us. And I'm excited to bring him on and talk about Broken Boy and, what this film means to him. So, see you soon. Yay! It's so good to see you.
I know, it's been a long time.
It has. And thank you so much for being a part of our festivities with Queerport and allowing us to screen your film.
Of course. I'm really excited to be able to share this with more of an audience.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we just watched the film, and so we've got a few questions. This is some pretty heavy subject material. This isn't something. I'm not gonna lie. Upon watching it the first time, it did take me by surprise because I didn't see that this was how the story was going to go. Which kudos to you, because that's doing a good movie. So, so what made you, or why was it important that you wanted to share this story?
So originally, it was made for a pitch for class. It was supposed to be like, just like a blind date. Turns out it was like, somebody they already knew, something like that. But I started to think about all the different times that I've had like friends who've had gone on blind dates, or friends who've had like experiences with other people that turned out to be very bad. That turned out to be like, oh, there's someone that like who's been hurt in the past, and there's so many friends of mine. It's all too common how much like what they call it, sexual assault is like done and is not talked about at all.
Especially in the queer community, it is very prevalent, very, very prevalent.
Especially when it comes to not only men but Black men, because society already places a huge stigma on Black men as it is. And add queer to that, it's a lot. It's really draining. And on top of that, if I think the way that I wanted it to be is that like it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. It can happen to anybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, this was written in a very interesting way, because the way you tell this story is through someone uncovering repressed memories. That's just an interesting approach to take to this, especially because they're meeting someone that they've already met before. And so why did you want to go that route?
And well, with that, I think it's because you know how when people react differently to trauma, some people would, they basically try to erase those memories or try to repress them to the point where it's like, they pretend that it has never happened, or they want to move on from it, so they just repress them. And it's kind of like how, there's certain things like certain triggers that people look into certain people, and is sometimes like unearths those old memories. And I think an inspiration for that was like for me personally, I've there's certain forms of trauma that of course I've gone through that, I've had to repress. And like every once in a while there's something that you see that just kind of like it gives you a flashback. And
Sure.
that was the kind of vibe I was going for. I think I was trying my best to have a true to form an accurate depiction of how like kind of like how trigger warnings actually like work,
Mm-hmm.
and how somebody like it triggers in their head like certain memories and stuff like that. So that's kind of like how I did the story, and like how
Sure.
it was edited. So
Now, I've watched it a few times now. I think that, there's a few different like super pivotal points that take place. One, the coffee cup falling. But I think for me, the biggest turning point is the confrontation that takes place outside afterwards.
mm-hmm.
Um, that scene is very hits very close to home for me, and I think that discovering truths about yourself and other people and confronting it face on is not a story that often gets told. I think that a lot of times when people are dealing with sexual assault, rape, trauma, it usually the story goes up until that point, and then it's more of a, well, what happened to the person that it affected afterwards, but not so much the person that they dealt with. And so watching that unfold in the conversation that took place, it was just very powerful. That was a very powerful moment. I just wanted to tell you that. I think that that's very courageous of you to even decide to sit down and want to do something like that, because, I mean, it's not seen. We don't talk about it. And if we do talk about it, it's a blip on the radar. Trans women are killed every week because of similar situations. And, a few weeks ago, we lost a member of our community. And, I don't know the specifications behind that. But I know that this is something that is happening. It happens all the time. And it has to be taken seriously. And so movies and films like this help bring that light to people to know that they're not alone. So I want you to know that's what this movie did for someone. So
And I'm really happy that okay. So I think a lot of people who have gotten feedback from about it, they've said that it gives them what they say, some form of closure,
mm-hmm.
if you can say that, some form of like, okay, this is how I wanted to deal with it for so long, but not everybody is able to have the strength to do that. So it kind of goes to be like, a what if I was able to stand up to my abuser and be able to like have the visuals,
Right.
as I'm not saying like a guide or anything, not saying that at all, but I feel like seeing a visual representation of somebody actually like putting the pieces together and having the courage to deal with that right head on,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it'll give confidence for other people to be able to deal with their other situations or similar situations
Right.
courageously, and
Right.
hopefully with closure for them. And not everyone's going to have that closure, but it it's good to be able to like give someone,
Sure.
confidence. Yeah.
Sure. You know, we were, when we talked a little bit just earlier, we were talking about like, like going on dates with people, and we live in a world that is ruled by dating apps. We are constantly on Tinder or Grinder or, these different apps where we take a chance on people. And that's very difficult because you never know what could happen. And I think that that's the reality that we live in today. I feel like, 10 years, 15 years ago, like, parents and adults would say things like, oh, the bad guys are going to get you on the internet, and like that is real. And it does happen. People are catfished all the time. People are have their identity stolen. And then people put their trust in these people and they go on blind dates, first dates, what have you, meet up for coffee or, anything of the sort. And like, what kind of advice would you give someone that may feel like they're in a situation where it might not be right?
Well, the route I would go is, I think, preparing for it. Give yourself a backup plan. Give yourself an exit strategy. Be like, hey, texting a friend and be like, hey, just call me, or like, I need someone around me, pick me up or something like that. If you feel like it starts to become uncomfortable, and like I said, not everyone's going to be have the strength to be able to deal with these kinds of situations head on.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes probably the best advice is to just try to exit as gracefully as you can and just cut off contact, especially if it turns out to be just like someone who's definitely an unsavory person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would basically I would text a friend and be like, hey, I, either pretend like, hey, call me right quick, or like, hey, be on standby because I don't know what's going on. I don't necessarily feel safe.
Right.
And it's not to cause alarm, but to be like, hey, I just need you to be there.
Right.
Like,
And
just up.
I think as queer people, we have that extra added layer. You know, it's already difficult dating as is, and it's already difficult meeting new people. But to add the added layer of, we're not like everyone else. That that's a safety issue for a lot of people, and can cause a lot of trauma and a lot of like, inner hurt from not being able to be more courageous and do things. Um, I mean, I know that I've felt like that before, meeting people, feeling, like I don't know this person, I've never met this person, we're going to hook up or we're going to go to, a club or whatever, like to meet each other. And, a lot of times alcohol is involved. Obviously, that, your story follows someone that, was roofied and was given drugs. And so like, sorry, there's like a fly in here. And but like that's common, and I've seen that firsthand happen to people. I've known friends that have been roofied and taken advantage of at local clubs, um, just within the last 6 years. um, it's not like it's not happening.
It's really sad though, because I feel like it's because a lot of us as queer people, we don't have the necessary education in order to combat things like this. Like, everything is coming from a such a heteronormative,
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, that is like there's not really like a guideline or much of there's no structure
No.
on how queer people are able to, you know, navigate this stuff, because everything else is is either we've had to, be relegated to just doing everything behind closed doors, or putting ourselves at risk of,
At risk, right?
causing violence for essentially nothing.
Right.
And
And I mean, if and I know a lot of people who have been in these situations where outsiders will say, well, why didn't you call someone? Why didn't you call the cops? I'm not calling the cops. I'm sorry. Like
like,
that's not how I'm going to respond, and I would hope that you wouldn't either, because that's only going to escalate the situation. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen cops get called for these situations and nothing happens. I had a friend of mine, someone that had a really terrible relationship go awry, and she had a stalker, and the cops didn't do anything.
I I feel like a lot of it starts with how men and male presenting people, let me get the right words for this. It's like we like for me as a man, like, and identifying as male, I know at this point it's 2020. I feel like I should have a responsibility to be able to, tell other men or male presenting people like, hey, don't act like you are entitled to
Right.
get laid or entitled to like get whatever you think you want. And that starting out from that is like we as kids, we're so like we're socialized to think
We're
that
programmed.
yeah, we're programmed to basically just be like, oh, you're gonna get the girl. Oh, it's like, oh, you have to do X, X, and Y in order to get your girl. And whenever people go against that, it's like people react with like hostility, and I'm like, you're not entitled
No.
to any kind of person. No one owes you anything. No one owes you anything for a date. No one owes you anything for dinner. Like you can't expect sexual favors or anything of the sort just because you're a nice person. You know what I
Right.
mean?
No, yeah.
And once people say no, especially like when it comes to straight identifying people, a lot of them do react with hostility because they didn't possibly never been told no
Right.
ever.
And it's all about power.
Is a power thing. That's it. It's all about power, and people don't realize how much of a play, how much power play is involved with like sexual assault because it's not about getting your rocks off. It's about oh I'm macho, all of this kind of
Right.
shit.
It's
And,
about making someone be submissive in a way that is out of their control.
mm-hmm. And I feel like when it comes to us being queer, that's an added layer of all of that because those gender norms that like are usually associated with sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
they're it's all fucked up. They're no longer there. So it's like people don't really know how to navigate that and don't know how to, you know,
I mean, I think
yeah.
one of the common misconceptions, and we hear this all the time, is, oh, well, you shouldn't have worn that skirt so short, or, you shouldn't have dressed like that. But I'm here to tell you, I was raped in my pajamas. So, like, it can happen to anyone, anywhere, and it doesn't matter what you're wearing.
I don't understand why people say it's like, oh, you shouldn't have wore that. I don't know.
Because they're
I'm like,
ashamed. People are ashamed of people's bodies. They're ashamed of their own body. So it's so easy to project that shame onto other people because honestly,
mm,
it's jealousy. It's jealousy that you're watching this person live their truth and live their life and be themselves unapologetically. And that, you're jealous.
like just because someone feels some kind of way, now you have feel like you have to basically dehumanize them just so you can like feel better. It's selfish. It's a lot of
It's
it is
very
selfish
selfish.
and selfishness. It's like how dare you feel like you're so high of yourself that you have to dehumanize other people in order to feel like you feel something.
Well,
Maybe
and
that's what
that's
that's
and that's
for.
called privilege.
It's privilege, and I'm like, you can go to therapy if you like feel that kind of way. Like, no, no cap.
No. So,
But I think like having a film like this being made, I feel like people get a lot out of this. Like people draw different conclusions. People feel different things from it. People root for Jalen and be like, hey, take on that mofo, or be like,
yeah.
or Tarika's like, oh, he didn't know. Like, there's different people that they're gonna root for different people, different situations in this. And I'm like, there's obviously there's a clear protagonist and antagonist,
Sure.
but it's also like there's more blurred lines, and you don't know who's going through what in order for them to go to do the things that they do.
Mhm.
It doesn't justify it, but it goes to explain. And sometimes explanations are needed in order to be like, okay, I understand. I don't forgive you. I don't,
Right.
you shouldn't be forgiven for what you did, but it makes sense. I understand. I don't like it, but I was like, okay, whatever. So I feel like this film can give people some kind of like perspective, be like, okay, we don't talk about this often, and some people see a little bit themselves in Jalen. And I feel like also with Zay, honestly, Zay was kind of like would be like blindsided by the whole thing. It was like he didn't know what was gonna happen. So I feel like if people try to, you know, antagonize Zay because of the situation, I feel like I kind of feel like it's like there's no way to be able to antagonize him because he didn't know what's going on. He obviously at the end of the film, you know, Jalen tells Zay what happened.
Right.
So this is just a lot of like different perspectives I feel like people can, you know, perceive from it.
Now,
And
is the story finished in this, or is this something you want to explore, with your characters in other ways?
I originally wrote it as like a longer piece.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically like kind of like a condensed version of the piece. And I feel like I can expand more on the characters to be able to explore more of like what's going on or their
Because I
lives.
think I would love to see, a perspective from what happened at the party, like getting to the party, what happened while they were out, or at the club or whatever, and seeing like how that led up to them meeting at the coffee shop, like.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to explore that. I really do. But I mean, considering right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, it's kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Which
But
when did you shoot this?
funnily enough, the weekend before everything shut down. So I was like, it was in the stars for this to get made.
In the stars.
It was in the stars for this to get made because everything shut down the next week. It was that first weekend of March.
And was this submitted to the film prize?
Okay, so I originally wanted to shoot it for film prize, but I ended up not doing it because honestly I couldn't really get what I wanted here in Shreveport.
Yeah.
So I have friends in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with them and we shot it in Richardson, in the Dallas area.
Yeah.
So as much as I really wanted to, use Shreveport as the location for it, I feel like I wasn't able to because TBH, there's not really much when it comes to like queer identifying actors around here, actors and actresses around here. And when you add on the layer of like, having race be
right, a very pivotal part of the story.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very it's limiting, but it's also like it just goes to show what we need to improve on.
Right.
In the community, in Shreveport, moving forward. Like there should be more, queer people of color, queer actors of color. And I do feel like this year's film prize having like a good bits and pieces of Shreveport and all over Louisiana does bring more more to the queer community in Shreveport. And honestly, when it comes to the rest of Louisiana, sans New Orleans, it feels like Shreveport is really on the progressive side when it comes to like queer representation, positive queer representation.
Yes.
Because we've also had the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. We've had that for over 10 years.
Right.
And that actually I think predates Film Prize.
It does.
So as conservative as Louisiana as a whole is, save for New Orleans.
We've got some people doing some cool stuff here. It's exciting.
It is. And it makes me really happy. So I think moving forward, I want to be able to like have more queer filmmakers.
Yeah. I mean, I think, with what we do and the whole goal of Queerport and moving forward with our Arts and Resource Center, I mean, it's a no-brainer that, film would be a big part of what we're doing. I would love to have our own like little mini movie theater kind of thing, like where people could come screen movies and like, have like Q&A sessions like this in real life, in real time with it.
Right?
I'd love for that to be able to happen. And hopefully, our goal by 2025 is to have a space. And, when that happens, I hope you're there with us.
I hope so. And I'm really happy to, be part of this community here in Shreveport. I'm really happy. There's so many people who are very loving, very supportive. And despite the fact that film, in particular film and visual media that, that's, moving
Right.
isn't as prominent here as, artists or musicians and whatever the sort. Like I still think there's a space for, queer videographers and photographers and filmmakers here.
100%.
It's just have to, like, start being more present. I think
that is exactly why you're here, and that is exactly why you're a part of this, so that when people see you, they can say, holy shit, like this person looks like me and I want to be a part of this too. So thank you for doing this with us, and for being a part of our little Q&A today.
Of course, I'm amazed at the support that I've gotten for this film, and I really hope that people can get something out of this.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jason, and we will chat soon.
Of course. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome. You have a wonderful day.
Of course, you too.
Bye.
Bye.